Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a unboxing and initial impression of the Tatula SV TW. I got it in the 8.1 to 1. My uses for it, I'm going to be using spinner baits, chatter baits, frogs, pretty much anything moving that I'll throw on a medium heavy rod. That way I can cut down the number of rods I bring when I'm going, say in a smaller John boat or a kayak. I'll be doing some on the water videos as well afterward. And primarily going to be comparing this to the Zillion SVTW, which I have in the 9.1 to 1. I primarily use that for jigs. I really like that reel, and I think the Tatula is going to be about 80 to 90% of that reel. I think the Zillion might be a little bit more refined, might be a little bit further of a caster, just because I know the Tatula SV was marketed more for skipping and all that stuff, and pictures of the inductor that I've seen, the inductor looks a little bit thicker, so it's going to have a stronger braking profile, which I think will help a lot of newcomers to bait casting. I know the SV spools are super easy to use. It makes me almost like a lazy caster of sorts, but I think Daiwa was really marketing those people that they really want to use bait casting, but they're kind of afraid to. I think this is going to be the good gateway reel to bait casting from the spinning reel users. So now we'll get on to the actual unboxing part, the fun part. Yeah, the purple on here I think looks pretty nice. Daiwa usually does a pretty good, nice job with the purple. I have the Steez SV TW, the 8.1. I got it from Japan, and that purple looks pretty nice on there. Also has, this almost has like a, at least from pictures, it's kind of, this is a Daiwa Jupiter right here we'll be mounting. Like almost the same color. I think it's a little bit darker. I mean, you guys will see that pretty soon. Wrapped pretty nice. Okay, here's some of the specs. I know a lot of people, a lot of the websites can have, you know, wrong specs or whatever. Put this right here. In case you couldn't read that, 8 to 1, 7.2 ounces, 13.2 pounds of drag, which is more than enough for most bass fishing. 32.8 inches per turn, which is pretty good. And then it has 7 ball bearings. I imagine this spool is going to be similar to a lot of the other deeper SV spools. They're not really too deep of a spool compared to most other manufacturers. But this will hold for 14 pound. It says 100 yards. And that obviously depends on what the diameter is. This is the line diameter to be 0.31 millimeters. So if you use a little bit thicker line, then of course it's going to be less than that. All right. Looks like it's pretty much the same frame as the Zillion. A little bit of cutouts up top. 90 millimeter handle. Zion Dragstar too. I know I read on Tackle Tour. Some people were saying it came with it. Some people said that it didn't. Nice purple accents right there. Silver SV spool. And something that's different about this SV spool compared to all the other SV spools in the past is that this one, just like the regular Tatula, has the shaft going through. It's not a free-floating spool. So it's going to look a lot like some Shimano reels as far as the shaft of the spool going through the reel instead of it being free-floating. My initial thoughts, it palms, might even be a little bit better than the Zillion. I know it's a little bit of a different frame. It's hard to tell without it being mounted on a rod. Comes with the rubberized T-shaped knobs that are on the original Tatula. If you've had the original Tatula, they're pretty grippy. I do like these if I'm using it for kind of high pressure situations, you know, frogs, jigs, flipping, stuff like that. I actually switch out from the tackle trap. I got a couple 100 millimeter Daiwa Zillion from the Zillion TWS. Got the 100 millimeter handles from that, and I really like those. Those give me more power. Put those on my punching reel, then also my jig reel. and they're not bad. They're like 25 bucks for the handle, knobs, everything, which is pretty nice. Okay, I guess I can go into what the spool looks like. Oh, that's tough. That was a gamble there. I used scissors to do that. Alright, it's loose. I say that's what they're nicer bearings that has almost like the black race. It's like almost like a black and gunmetal look. I don't know if you can see that. I know that's what they use in a lot of their higher end reels. I don't know if it's the same quality or not. It's kind of the big thing with the SV spools is that instead of the inductor coming straight out like a like the other Mag-Force system like Mag-Force Z, the SV spool actually it'll come straight out like that, but also it turns forward and backward, so it's more responsive. So when you spool, say when you are skipping lures, that change in speed that's going across from you wind up a little bit faster and it slows down as it's skipping. It's more adaptive that way. Also, that is a way it could cut down a little bit less braking distance. I mean, a little bit less casting distance, but I don't notice it too much, and especially if you throw in plastics and jigs where you don't need a super long cast. I think it's a moot point. You're not really sacrificing much performance. Now, if you're throwing crankbaits or anything, you need a super long cast. You might be able to make the argument, but overall, in my experience of using SV reels, I don't see that the casting distance hinders my performance at all. And especially with the wind, it's super nice having that SV. So, put the spool back in, kind of get to fishing mode a little bit. My initial spin of the reel, it did feel pretty smooth and connected as well. It didn't feel dry. It felt like it came with enough lube in there. I know sometimes when you buy reels, they feel a little bit geary, and then you add some lube and they're good. Put a little bit of pressure on as well going through. There's a little bit of a like that whirring noise where you get, but that might just be because my thumb's on there. It's smooth. I mean, it's not like like a Steez, but it's definitely pretty good for a $200 reel. Actually, I'd say even like it's almost up there with the Zillion. I know with the first generation of the TWS, Tatula and Zillion, there were a lot of people out there that are saying that it was almost the same reel, except for, I mean, the Zillion maybe had a little bit more connected, a little bit more refined, and a lot of people didn't think it was worth extra at the time. It was a $150 difference. Now it's a $100 difference. I think they bridged that gap. It feels nice. Surprising it did have the Zion Drag Star, which is on the Tatula Type R, the original Type R. I'm not sure if it was on the CT or not. I haven't ever used the Tatula CT, but it's it's just mainly cosmetic. It does look better. It feels better too. It's smoother. It's not that a little bit less expensive looking plastic. There's no clicking drag. I mean, cast control knob. It does look nice. It has some nice purple accents to it. You see it there, and also right there. It's non-clicking, which isn't really a big deal. Like what I usually do, I'll set it till there's just barely any back and forth play, and you don't have to even touch it again. At least for me, that's what's nice about the SV spool. It's super versatile. It's about right there. And then, for the most part, I'll run it. If I'm using fluorocarbon, I'll run a little bit higher. I usually run it about maybe at 8. If it's windy, I might kick it up 1. Depends on what lure. There's very minimal adjusting. You can just, you got a chatterbait on, throw it out there, reel it in, then you can just take it off, throw on like a Senko, just throw same brake setting for the most part. Very minimal monkeying around with your reel, which is nice because then you're not forgetting to adjust your brakes, and you blow up your spool, and oh, you're done for the day. You know, it's really tight too. That's actually pretty good. There's very little in and out play on the handle. That's one thing I'm kind of a stickler about, especially if I'm throwing crankbaits or any sort of moving baits and I feel something moving around. I don't like it. Knobs are tight too. I'd have no problem, if I was chucking and winding spinner baits with this. I do prefer faster gear ratios. If you look for, I guess, a more traditional all-around reel, you might want to step down a gear ratio to the 7.3. But I like fast gear ratios, especially if I'm using a frog. I want to get the frog back. There's a lot of unproductive water for me with a frog. I want to hit the hot spots, hurry up, get the next cast. So now I'll mount it on the rod, and I'll palm it a few different ways. I know people palm reels different. I palm it kind of weird. I kind of claw my whole hand over it like that. I don't think this is going to be an uncomfortable reel. It doesn't matter. I have small hands. But I also thought the original Tatula frame wasn't bad either. That's actually, I used the Zillion TWS, the 9.1. That's what I use for my punch reel, and I like it. It's a lot of reel to hang on to. It gives me good base. But these are really comfortable. Like I said, I use the Zillion SV TW, which is pretty much the same frame. I use that. I use that for my jig rod, and I love it. So now I'll mount it, palm it a few different ways so you guys can see. If you got big hands, small hands, whatever. Then after that, I'll go into some of my expectations of what I'm going to be using with the setup. I'll kind of talk about the rod a little bit. I want to talk about the reel because I know it's ICAST is coming up. I know there's a lot of hype about the reel, so I'm going to keep it to the reel as much as I can. But the rod I'm going to be throwing it on, I actually got it on clearance at Walmart for $10. It's a Daiwa Jupiter. It's a 7-foot medium heavy. It's pretty light. I think it's 3.8 ounces. I mean, I think it retails for $70 when it was still in circulation. Feels like it's a little bit tip heavy. I'm not concerned. I'm throwing spinner baits and stuff with it, and for $10, I'll take it. Let's see. And I mainly do use left-handed reels, but for frogs and all that stuff, it doesn't bother me. I can flip with either hand too. It just doesn't bother me that much, and instead of having one wrist just doing all the work, I kind of flip it around. So hopefully I can prevent carpal tunnel, stuff like that. That's what I'm telling myself. Yeah. So this is me palming it how most people do. Couple fingers in the back, kind of up like this. Feels pretty comfortable. I do not palm it like that, however, but I don't see how that wouldn't be all comfortable at all. How I do it, I kind of put my whole hand over the top, kind of swallow the reel, but that feels comfortable because the back's kind of tapered in, almost like kind of how the Steve's SVTW is. Not as exaggerated, but you can definitely feel it when you put the heel of your hand over the top. It's pretty nice. I think it's pretty comfortable. I know I've tried some reels from other manufacturers, and there's always usually something that I can kind of pick out palming, but this feels nice. I'm not hitting the tension knob. Sometimes I'll do that when I'm palming with some of the reels if they have a bigger knob there, but that keeps my finger right out of the way. Something I didn't talk about before, kind of just thought of it when I had my hand on the reels. The drag, I know it says was 13.2 pounds, which is plenty enough for all my bass fishing. But it feels pretty smooth too. I'm gonna put it to loose, and I'm just gonna work it tighter and tighter. Yeah, if you have the Zillion SVTW, it reminds me of that. It's pretty smooth. I mean, that's about halfway. I don't feel any hiccups or stuttering or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, it's not bad at all. So I have the brakes on 0. Something else that a lot of people like to see is the free spool. With the SV spools, you can get a little bit less because that inductor does still pop out, even though you have the brakes on 0. So you're not going to get as much, but it's not really a true test of the reel's performance anyway. Big thing is going to be control. You still get pretty good distance with the other SV spools. I'm hoping this is the same way. I have high expectations for it, for sure. It's kind of modest. I think it's just based on how the spool is, and with the longer shaft in the two, you get more drag. But yeah, here's a TWS right there, T-wing. It's a smaller T-wing than the original Tatula as well. If you've used the CT or if you've used the Zillion SV, it's gonna be the same thing. That would that be Gen 3 of the T-wing, and they moved it a little bit further away from the spool than they had in the original Tatula. I noticed that with the other Gen 3 T-wing reels I have. So that angle that your line comes out, I mean, you can just visually look at it. Let me get it in the middle here for you guys. Yeah, the angle that comes out, if you look at the spool compared to up where the T-wing is, it's not bad at all. And you can definitely feel that when you're pitching. At least for me, when I'm pitching, flipping, stuff like that, I definitely feel that the T-wing just lets the line shoot out, especially if you're using thick fluorocarbon. You know, if you're using like 14 pound, 16 pound. I don't use anything like up in the 20s like some people do, but it lets the line just shoot right off, which is pretty nice. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have any other, if you guys have anything to, yeah, so that pretty much does it for my initial impressions for the reel, the unboxing. Hopefully I can show you guys some parts that you want. I'm not going to break it down quite yet. I'll probably break it down after I use it. I'll do that in a future video. Probably have this be 3 parts. I'll have the first part, my initial impression, what I just did. Part 2 would be on the water. I'll try to use it here in a couple of days. Then I'll get a couple of uses. I'll try to throw some different lures, you know, different situations, stuff like that. I'll be running braid on this. I think it's the first time in a while I've ran braid on an SV reel. Usually I use fluorocarbon because it kind of the SV spool helps to negate some of the negatives of fluorocarbon. You know, kind of memory jumping off your spool. SV spool tames it pretty good. But I'm going to throw braid on this, so I'm going to need a little bit extra time to kind of help me translate that to what I'm used to. I'm used to fluorocarbon. If there's anything else you want me to review about the reel, I can put it in my my third video, which would be kind of overall, you know, between the initial impression on the water, and also I'll break it down too. I'll probably throw some lube in there, just something I like to do, and just look at it. So I can kind of show you guys the inside of the reel with that video. So if there's anything you want to see in that video that I may have missed in this video or in the next video, you just subscribe, and then also just comment below to say, hey, you know, how does it feel at this, or can you try throwing this lure?